You. Shut up. Yeah, you. One great thing about America is I can say that to you, but neither I nor anyone, especially the government, and they're the ones that count because they have the guns and the right to use force, no one in this country can force you to shut up. We have the right to free speech. And that means as long as you don't directly incite violence, you can say just about anything. But what if you say something repulsive, hateful, dangerous? I can't forbid you to say it, but don't I have a moral responsibility to criticize you about it forcefully? Yes, says a man who's been called the best-known criminal lawyer in the world, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. He's angry about a book and about college professors from Princeton and the University of Chicago who plugged the book. So please explain.
Well, every year, some nutcases publish books that say the Jews try to control the world, that Hitler was right, that the Holocaust didn't occur, that Jews killed Christian children and used their blood to bake matzah. Every year, people publish books like this, and this is another book like that.
And this is their right?
Yeah, sure. And some obscure saxophonist from England who nobody takes particularly seriously wrote
Well, the left wing takes him seriously.
Well, he hates
the Guardian says he's one of the London's finest saxophonists.
Well, they take his music seriously, but his writing nobody takes seriously. He hates the left as much as he hates the right. He hates anybody who's Jewish or has anything to do with being Jewish.
And he is a Jew. He's born in Israel.
He says he hates the Jew in him and that he would like to get rid of anything that relates to his Jewish background. And so he writes all these things about Hitler and about the Holocaust, and nobody would take it seriously except that two very prominent professors have endorsed the book and told everybody, presumably including their students, to read it, to think about it, to reflect on it, to widely discuss it. Imagine sending your kid to the University of Chicago. Wow, he got in. Now he has Professor Mearsheimer, who's in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and he said, read and discuss whether Hitler was right, whether the Jews killed Christian children. Wow, that gives an imprimatur, for the first time in my adult life, to genuine anti-Semitism.
John Mearsheimer says, of course I do not agree with everything the author says in the book. What Blurber does. He liked parts.
Well, there's nothing in this book that deserves to be liked. It's conspiracy theories.
He said it's a fascinating and provocative book on Jewish identity.
Well,
it's
that's
his
like
opinion.
saying that Mein Kampf is a provocative and serious book about German identity. It's not about Jewish identity. This guy hates Jews, hates everything about Jews, makes up facts, says the Holocaust didn't occur. The idea that you would endorse this book, written not by an academic, written by some obscure saxophonist. Why does a professor at the University of Chicago endorse this book? Because he hates Jews. Look, I don't want to censor anything. Let anybody who wants to read the book.
What do you want done
I
here?
want to shame Professor Mearsheimer. We don't do enough shaming in our society. Shame on you for supporting bigotry and anti-Semitism and the worst kind of hatred. People should come over to him.
The university should throw him out?
Absolutely not. Students should go over to him and say, how could you have done that? Faculty members should say at lunch, how come you're endorsing a book that could have been written by Hitler or David Duke? What are you doing? Have you lost your mind?
Fight speech you find ugly with more speech.
Absolutely. The answer to false speech is good speech. The answer to bad speech is better speech. Let's at least engage in the marketplace of ideas and shame people for becoming complicit in the oldest bigotry in the world. If anybody endorsed a book which had views like this about black people, about gay people, about women, they would immediately
I know you don't want to
shaming.
plug this book, but we should give the title since we're talking about it. The Wandering Who, Study of Jewish Identity Politics.
It's not about Jewish identity politics. He says the Jewish religion is the most dangerous religion in the world. I mean, this is the kind of junk that you expect to read on neo-Nazi websites. By the way, neo-Nazi websites love this book. He is a hero to the neo-Nazis. Why is he a hero to John Mearsheimer? Why is he a hero to Richard Falk? Why is he a hero
Richard Falk is a
to
professor
Brian
at my university, Princeton. He responded to our email. Mearsheimer didn't. I endorsed the book as a story of the quest for Jewish identity, not as a narrative with which I approve. I've never taken anti-Semitic positions.
Yes, he has. He has taken anti-Semitic positions, number one. Number two, you don't do that on the cover of the book. A transforming story should be reflected upon and discussed widely. If somebody had endorsed the book saying that slavery hadn't occurred or that there were no rapes ever against women, they would be shamed today. And I think the university and its students and its faculty ought to shame these professors. They ought to understand that what they've done is cross a terrible line. Ignore the author of this book. Ignore the book. But don't ignore Mearsheimer. Don't ignore Falk.
Some people might say, what are you so uptight about? Anti-Semitism seems to be decreasing in the United States. The ADL did surveys since 1960 asking people, do you agree or disagree with this question? It's gone from 40% believing things like Jews are more irritating down to 17% today.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good development. It's not true around the world. It's gone up dramatically in France, gone up dramatically in England, gone up dramatically in many Arab countries and in many parts of the world, and increasingly being accepted on some college campuses today.
There was some of that in the Occupy Wall Street demonstrations. Here's an interview with a union teacher in Los Angeles.
The Zionist Jews who are running these big banks in our Federal Reserve, which is not run by the federal government, they need to be run out of this country.
So I assume that's a fringe comment. Most of the people don't agree with it. So what? There are all kinds of nuts in the movement.
There's a difference between a fringe nut and a distinguished professor in American Academy of Arts and Sciences and another distinguished professor who used to be the rapporteur for Palestinian affairs for the United Nations. But remember what that woman said. She said Zionist Jew. She didn't mean Zionist Jew. She means Jews. But you can use the word Zionist today when you mean Jews. And he says in this book over and over again, Zionists are Jews, Jews are Zionists, it's all the same thing. You know what he calls the recent credit crunch? The Zio punch. He's saying Jews are responsible for what's going on in the world today. That's what these professors are telling their students it's okay to say and consider on a university campus. You know, there are certain things that are generally taboo on university campuses, namely racism and sexism and homophobia. What these guys are trying to do is say anti-Semitism is no longer a taboo on university campuses. It's okay.
You don't want to censor anybody, but you want more criticism.
I want more criticism. I want more shaming. I want when people make these kinds of endorsements, I want them to be held accountable for it.
Thank you, Professor Alan Dershowitz.